Hello listener, if you're hearing this, you're still on solid ground. If you're new here, subscribe and comment where you're listening from. This story is about choosing the most isolated place I could reach when the world ended. About spending 200 days on a metal platform in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so far from land that you can't see the horizon clearly on hazy days. About learning that the ocean is vast and beautiful and utterly indifferent to whether you live or die. About discovering that you can be surrounded by infinite space and still feel like the walls are closing in. About understanding that isolation isn't just physical distance. It's the slow erosion of everything that makes you human. My name is Connor Hayes, and before the world caught fire and died screaming, I was a petroleum engineer on Deep Horizon, an offshore oil drilling platform operated by Sentinel Energy Corporation. Deep Horizon 7 sat approximately 20 miles off the coast of Central California, positioned over waters that measured 400 feet deep at the seabed, extracting crude oil from deposits buried 2 miles below the ocean floor. The platform itself was a marvel of engineering, 300 feet long, 200 feet wide, rising 150 feet above the water, line on for enormous support legs that were anchored to the seabed with massive concrete and steel foundations, designed to withstand hurricane-force winds and 30-foot waves. I'd been working offshore for 6 years when the outbreak started. It was good money, really good money, the kind that let you pay off student loans in 3 years instead of 10. The kind that made the isolation and danger worthwhile. I'd gotten used to the lifestyle, the rhythm of it. 2 weeks on the platform, 2 weeks on shore. During your on period, you lived in the platform's housing modules, worked 12-hour shifts maintaining drilling equipment, ate 3 meals a day in the mess hall with the other 90-odd workers who were your entire world, slept in small cabins with industrial air conditioning that never quite blocked out the constant hum of machinery, and the endless sound of waves, slapping against the support legs 150 feet below. Most people couldn't handle it. The isolation got to them within the first rotation, being 20 miles from land with nothing but ocean in every direction, water stretching to the horizon like a vast blue-gray desert that moved and breathed, the knowledge that if something went catastrophically wrong, a blowout, a fire, a structural failure, rescue was at minimum an hour away by helicopter, longer if weather was bad, and sometimes impossible if conditions were severe enough. The sense of living on a metal island that was constantly vibrating with the pulse of machinery, constantly groaning as wind and waves stressed the support structure, constantly reminding you that you were suspended 150 feet above dark water on aging steel and concrete that had been battling the ocean for 30 years. But I'd learned to love it. Genuinely love it in a way that surprised me. I loved the simplicity of platform life. Wake up, eat, work, eat, sleep, repeat. I loved the routine that freed you from the endless decisions of shore life. I loved watching the sun rise over endless Pacific water, the way the light would paint the waves gold and pink and orange before settling into the blue of day. I loved the profound quiet during shift changes, when the drilling machinery would briefly pause for maintenance, and you could hear nothing but wind and waves and the occasional cry of seabirds. I loved the sense of being disconnected from the chaos of shore life, from traffic and bills and relationship drama and all the noise that filled normal existence. That love of isolation would save my life, and it would nearly destroy my sanity. The outbreak reached California on June 14, 2024. I remember the date exactly because it was my birthday. I'd turned 32 that day, though nobody on the platform knew or cared. I was 2 days into a 2-week rotation on Deep Horizon 7. Everything was normal. We'd done the morning safety meeting at 0530 like we did every morning, reviewed the day's work plans, discussed weather conditions, reminded everyone about proper safety equipment protocols, started the 0600 shift right on schedule. I was in the drill equipment bay on level 3, performing routine maintenance on the rotary system that turned the drill bit 2 miles below the ocean floor, when the first indication that something was wrong came over the platform's PA system. The platform manager's voice, usually calm and professional with that slight Texas drawl that marked him as a man who'd worked Gulf of Mexico rigs before transferring to the Pacific, had an edge of tension I'd never heard before. All personnel, we've received notification from shore operations of a major incident in Los Angeles. Details are unclear at this time. Continue normal operations but remain alert for further updates. That is all. I exchanged looks with Mike Chen, the other engineer working the drill bay with me that morning. Mike had been offshore for 10 years, had seen everything from platform fires to workers lost overboard, and nothing much rattled him, but even he looked concerned. Major incident could mean anything. Earthquake California had them all the time. Terrorist attack, we'd all lived through 9/11s. Knew it could happen again. Industrial accident at one of the refineries. Port explosion. Any number of things that might warrant an announcement, but wouldn't necessarily affect us 20 miles offshore. We shrugged and went back to work. What else could we do? An hour later, at 0715, the PA crackled again with more urgency. All personnel to the mess hall immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to the mess hall now. That was unusual. Very unusual. Emergency musters happened on the helipad or at lifeboat stations, not the mess hall. The mess hall was for meetings, for meals, for the occasional birthday celebration. It wasn't part of any emergency protocol I'd been trained on, but we complied. Mike and I secured the equipment we'd been working on, made sure nothing would be damaged by leaving it mid-maintenance, and headed for the mess hall. In the corridors, we joined streams of other workers, roughnecks in dirty coveralls, mechanics in grease-stained shirts, kitchen staff still wearing aprons, everyone looking confused and concerned. The entire platform crew, 94 people, that rotation crammed into the mess hall. It was designed to hold maybe 100 comfortably, so we fit, but just barely. People stood along the walls, sat on tables, filled every available space. Platform manager Rodriguez stood at the front of the room near the serving counter, his face pale in a way I'd never seen. He was a man in his mid-50s, had probably seen 1,000 emergencies in his 3 decades working offshore, but whatever this was had shaken him. Behind him, a laptop was connected to the wall-mounted TV that usually showed movies or sports. The laptop showed a news broadcast. CNN, I think. The images didn't make sense at first. Chaos in Los Angeles. Helicopter footage of freeways clogged with abandoned cars. People running through streets. Fires burning in multiple locations. The news anchor woman I vaguely recognized from occasional news watching looked genuinely terrified. Which was wrong, because news anchors are trained to remain calm, to deliver even terrible news with professional composure. Rodriguez spoke, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent mess hall. I'll be direct because we don't have time for anything else. There's an outbreak of some kind of infection on the mainland. Started in Los Angeles sometime early this morning. Reports are confused and contradictory, but from what we can piece together from multiple news sources, it sounds like people are becoming violent, attacking others without provocation. The infection spreads through bites or blood contact. Victims become aggressive within hours. The governor has declared a state of emergency, martial law in LA County and surrounding areas. The National Guard has been mobilized. The room erupted in voices. Questions shouted over each other. What kind of infection? Is it terrorism? Are our families safe? What about us? Fear rippled through the crowd like a physical wave. Rodriguez raised his hands for quiet. It took almost a minute for people to settle down enough for him to continue. Our company has activated emergency protocols. The supply boat that was scheduled to arrive tomorrow has been cancelled. We've been ordered to shelter in place on the platform until the situation is resolved. We have sufficient food, water, and supplies for at least 60 days at full crew capacity. Communication with shore operations is ongoing. Everyone will get satellite phone time to contact families. For now, we maintain normal operations and wait for updates. I know this is frightening. I know you want to be with your families, but right now, the safest place for us is right here. Shelter in place. On an oil platform, 20 miles from shore, it should have felt safe. It should have felt like the perfect place to ride out whatever was happening on land. A fortress surrounded by a moat of ocean, isolated from whatever chaos was consuming the cities. Some people felt that way. I could see relief on certain faces, but others looked panicked, desperate. They wanted to be evacuated immediately, wanted to be with their families, wanted to get home before whatever this was got worse. But there was no evacuation. Rodriguez made that clear when someone demanded it. The helicopters that normally shuttled between platform and shore had been grounded by the FAA. The supply boats had stopped running. We were stuck here whether we liked it or not. Over the next 3 days, we watched the world end via satellite internet and news broadcasts that became increasingly fragmented and terrified. The infection wasn't just in LA anymore. It was spreading with horrifying speed. San Francisco by that first evening, San Diego by midnight, Sacramento by morning. The reports were fragmentary, contradictory, increasingly desperate. People attacking each other in the streets, hospitals completely overwhelmed within hours, emergency services unable to respond to the volume of calls, military deploying but unable to contain the spread, cities burning, infrastructure failing. Society collapsing in real time. I spent hours in a small computer room where we had satellite internet access, refreshing news sites, reading updates from social media before those platforms started going dark. The pattern was consistent everywhere. Infections spread through bites. Victims turned violent within hours. The infected attacked anyone they encountered, spreading the infection exponentially. It was like something from a movie, except this was real. This was actually happening. I tried calling my sister in Portland on the satellite phone. The first day she answered, told me they were seeing refugees fleeing north from California, that the news was saying to stay indoors, that she was scared. The second day, the call went to voicemail. The third day, the number just rang endlessly, never even connecting to voicemail. I tried my parents in Arizona, same thing, ringing into a void. My ex-girlfriend in San Diego, nothing, just phantom connections to phones that nobody would ever answer again. On the platform, people were glued to the news broadcasts whenever they weren't working. The mess hall TV ran 24/7, showing whatever news channels were still broadcasting. We watched as networks went off the air one by one. First the smaller local stations, then regional networks, then even the major national broadcasters. The last one I remember was CNN. They'd moved to some kind of bunker facility, were broadcasting with minimal staff, showing helicopter footage of cities burning. Then mid-broadcast, the feed cut, not too static, just to a black screen. The satellite signal was still there, but there was nothing being broadcast anymore. Our satellite internet connection lasted another day before it too went dark. Not because our equipment failed, but because whatever servers and infrastructure kept the internet running had stopped functioning. The platforms, satellite phones, could still make calls. The satellites were still up there, still functioning, but there was nobody to call. Just numbers that rang forever or went straight to automated messages. The company's shore operations stopped responding to radio calls on day 4. We'd been getting periodic updates from Sentinel Energy headquarters in Houston, brief messages telling us to stay put and wait. Then those stopped. The radio went silent except for automated emergency broadcasts from government stations. Messages that looped endlessly. Remain in your homes. Avoid contact with infected individuals. Help is coming. This is not a test, but help wasn't coming. We all knew it. The world had ended and we were alone on a metal platform in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. On Day 7 of the outbreak, June 21st, platform manager Rodriguez called another meeting in the mess hall. The mood was dramatically different from the first meeting. People looked hollow, exhausted. We'd all been trying to contact families for days with no success. We'd all been watching the news broadcasts until they stopped. We'd all been coming to the same terrible conclusion. Rodriguez didn't bother with preambles this time. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We've lost all contact with shore operations. No one is answering at company headquarters in Houston. No one is answering at the regional office in Long Beach. Government emergency channels are broadcasting automated messages only, and those are starting to fail. Based on everything we've seen and heard over the past week, the situation on the mainland appears to be catastrophic. Society has collapsed. We are on our own. He paused. Let that sink in. Let 93 people absorb the reality that we were completely isolated, that rescue wasn't coming, that the world we'd known was gone. We have a decision to make as a group, Rodriguez continued. We can stay here on the platform, where we have shelter, power from our generators, desalination for fresh water, and enough food for approximately 60 days at full crew capacity. Or we can attempt to evacuate using the platform's lifeboats and try to reach shore, where conditions are unknown but almost certainly dangerous. The debate that followed was heated and went on for hours. The mess hall became divided into clear camps. Roughly half the crew wanted to evacuate immediately. They had families on shore, or at least hoped their families were still alive. They couldn't bear the thought of sitting on this platform doing nothing while their loved ones might need help. They argued that the platform wasn't designed for long-term habitation, that we'd run out of food eventually, that we had no future here. Better to take the risk and try to get home, try to find their families, try to survive on land even if conditions were bad. The other half, myself included, wanted to stay. The platform was safe, isolated, defendable. We had power, water, shelter. What did the mainland have? Chaos, violence, infected people, death. Going to shore was suicide. At least here we had time. Time for things to stabilize. Time for the military to get control. Time for rescue to eventually come. The argument went in circles. People shouted. A few fights nearly broke out. Rodriguez had to intervene multiple times to keep order. Finally, after 3 hours of debate, he made a decision as platform manager. Anyone who wants to evacuate can take the lifeboats. No one will be forced to stay against their will. But I'm staying. This platform is my responsibility, and I encourage everyone to think very carefully about what you're choosing. 47 people chose to evacuate. Nearly half the crew. They gathered their personal belongings, whatever supplies they could carry, and prepared to take 2 of the platforms for emergency lifeboats. The lifeboats were large, enclosed vessels painted bright orange, designed to hold 50 people each and survive rough seas. They had their own engines, emergency supplies, GPS navigation, marine radios, survival gear. They were built specifically for this kind of emergency evacuation. I watched from the helipad as the lifeboats were lowered into the water using the platform's crane system. It was late afternoon, the sun starting its descent toward the western horizon. The ocean was relatively calm, maybe 2-foot swells, good conditions for a crossing. Watched as 47 people, co-workers I'd known for years, friends I'd shared meals with, people I'd worked shoulder to, within the equipment bays climbed down the access ladder to the boats bobbing. In the water below, the boat's engine started with a diesel rumble that carried across the water. They pulled away from the platform, heading east toward the California coast. The coast was visible as a dark smudge on the horizon, maybe a hint of mountains if you squinted. 20 miles. In good conditions, the lifeboats could make that crossing in under 2 hours. I stood on the helipad watching them go until they were just orange specks in the distance. Then nothing at all. Disappeared over the horizon or into the haze. I couldn't tell which. I never saw any of those 47 people again. Never knew if they made it to shore. Never knew what they found when they got there. Never knew how they died, because I was certain they had died. Nobody survived what was happening on the mainland. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe they made it. Maybe they're still out there somewhere. Probably not. The remaining 47 of us, platform manager Rodriguez, myself, Mike Chen, 44, others settled into a new routine over the following days. We couldn't maintain full drilling operations with half the crew gone, so we shut down the active drilling. No point extracting oil when there was no shore infrastructure to process it, no tankers coming to collect it, no civilization left to use it. But we kept the platform operational, maintained the generators that provided electricity, ran the desalination system that converted seawater to fresh water, kept the basic life support systems functioning, organized ourselves into work shifts, watch rotations, meal schedules. We rationed food carefully from the start. The platform's stores had been stocked for 60 days at full crew capacity, for people eating 3 meals a day. With 47 people, that meant we had food for approximately 120 days if we maintained the same consumption rate. But we immediately cut back to 2 meals a day, reduced portion sizes, eliminated snacks and extras. With careful rationing, we calculated we could stretch supplies to maybe 160 days. Call it 5 months. 5 months to wait for rescue. 5 months to wait for the situation on shore to stabilize. 5 months to figure out what came next. We organized watch rotations, always someone monitoring the horizon for ships, scanning the radio frequencies for any broadcasts, maintaining hope that rescue or at least information would come. We created work schedules to keep everyone busy, because idle time led to brooding, to depression, to despair. We established rules for satellite phone use, 10 minutes per person per week, to try calling anyone they could think of, though those calls never connected to anything but ringing or automated messages. Days turned into weeks. The platform's routine continued. Wake up, work shift, meal, work shift, meal, sleep, repeat. The sameness was both comforting and maddening. Comforting because routine provided structure, a sense of normality in an abnormal situation. Maddening because every day was identical. Every day brought no change, no news, no hope. We saw smoke on the coastal horizon sometimes during those first weeks. Distant fires burning, visible especially at night as orange glows against the darkness. We saw them for the first few weeks, then they gradually diminished. Either the fires burned out, or whatever was burning had been completely consumed. The coast stopped glowing at night, became just darkness. No ships came, not one. The ocean that had been busy with tanker traffic, with fishing boats, with cargo vessels, with Coast Guard patrols, all of it stopped. The Pacific became empty. Just us on our platform and endless water in every direction. No helicopters flew over. The sky that had always shown contrails from commercial aircraft, that had regular helicopter traffic between platforms and shore, became empty too. Just clouds and birds and the occasional jet contrail so high it was probably military. If it was anything at all, the crew started showing strain around day 20. Fights broke out over trivial things, someone taking too long in the shower, someone being too loud during sleep hours, someone taking more than their fair share at meals. People stopped sleeping well. You could see it in their faces. The exhaustion that came from lying awake at night thinking about families on shore, about the world that was gone, about the uncertain future. Depression set in. Some people stopped coming to meals, stayed in their cabins, had to be coaxed out for their work shifts. Others became manic, talking constantly, unable to sit still, finding tasks to do every waking hour because stopping meant thinking and thinking meant spiraling. The platform that had felt like safety started to feel like a prison. We were safe, yes, protected from whatever was happening on shore, but we were also trapped, stuck in this metal box in the middle of the ocean with no way off except the remaining 2 lifeboats, and taking those meant abandoning safety for almost certain death. Around day 30, people started talking seriously about leaving, taking the lifeboats, trying to reach shore. They couldn't stand the isolation anymore, the not knowing, the helpless feeling of sitting on this platform while the world died without them. Rodriguez tried to talk them out of it, reminded them that the 47 who'd left were almost certainly dead, that going to shore was suicide, that our best chance was staying here, waiting, surviving as long as possible. Some listened, others didn't. On day 34, July 18th, everything changed. We were having dinner in the mess hall. It was around 1800 hours. The evening meal had become a social time, one of the few periods when the whole remaining crew gathered together. We'd been discussing plans for extending our food supply, talking about the possibility of fishing, debating whether we could grow anything in makeshift gardens using platform equipment. Then someone on watch duty burst through the mess hall doors, breathing hard, eyes wide. Supply boat. There's a supply boat approaching from the north. The mess hall erupted. People jumped up from tables, knocked over chairs, rushed for the exits. We all ran to the north side platform railing, the side facing the open ocean, and there it was unmistakable even at a distance. One of Sentinel Energy's supply vessels, a 150-foot boat designed specifically for bringing equipment and supplies to offshore platforms. White hull with the company's blue logo visible even from miles away. It was maybe 2 miles out, heading directly toward us. The relief that flooded through the group was almost physical. Contact, rescue, information. Finally, after 34 days of complete isolation, someone had come. Shore operations hadn't completely collapsed. The company was still functioning. Civilization still existed. People were laughing, crying, hugging each other. Rodriguez was on the marine radio immediately, trying to contact the approaching vessel. Supply vessel approaching Deep Horizon 7. This is Platform Manager Rodriguez. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Over. Static. We waited. Rodriguez tried again. Supply vessel. This is Deep Horizon 7. Please respond. Over. More static. Then, finally, a voice came through. Male, young, but something was wrong with the tone. Panicked, gasping. Platform. Help. Oh God, please help us. They're on the boat. They're everywhere. Can't hold them back much longer. Need help. The celebration on the platform stopped instantly. Rodriguez's expression went from relief to concern. Supply vessel. Identify yourself. Who is this? What's your situation? Over there. Jesus Christ. They got Marcus. They're eating him. Oh God. Oh God. Gunshots crackled over the radio. Sharp reports that came through the speaker, tinny and distant. Then screaming. Multiple voices screaming. Then more gunshot. Then silence. Not static. Just an open channel with nothing but ambient noise. The supply boat was maybe a mile away now. Close enough that we could see it clearly through binoculars. And what we saw made my blood freeze. The boat was damaged. Windows in the wheelhouse were broken. Dark stains on the white hull, stains that looked like blood. And figures on the deck. Lots of them. Moving in ways that were wrong. Stumbling, jerking. The shambling, uncoordinated movement we'd seen in news footage before the broadcasts stopped. It's infected. Someone whispered next to me. The boat is full of infected. We watched in horror as the supply boat kept coming, heading straight for the platform, not slowing, not changing course, just coming at us on whatever heading had been set before. Whoever was steering lost control. It's going to hit us, someone else said, voice rising with panic. Rodriguez was already moving, shouting orders. Everyone clear the north side. Get to the crane. We need to try to fend it off. The platform had several large cranes for lifting equipment and supplies from boats. We ran to the nearest one on the north side. Tommy Martinez, who'd been a crane operator for 20 years, climbed into the cabin and fired up the diesel engine. The crane roared to life, hydraulics whining as Tommy swung the boom out over the water. The supply boat was maybe 500 yards away now, close enough that we could see individual figures on the deck. There were dozens of them, all moving with that horrible jerky motion. Some were falling over the railings into the water, others were clustered around what looked like bodies. Tommy lowered the crane's hook, a massive steel affair meant for lifting multi-ton equipment. I can try to snag their rigging, pull them off course, he shouted down to us. Do it, Rodriguez yelled back. The boat was 300 yards away. 200. Tommy swung the hook toward the approaching vessel. Missed. The boom wasn't long enough to reach that far. He retracted the cable, swung again. The boat was so close now I could hear its engines, running on autopilot or stuck throttle, propelling the vessel forward without anyone at the controls. 100 yards. Tommy swung the hook one more time. It caught something on the boat's forward deck. There was a horrible screech of metal. The crane cable went taut. The entire crane structure groaned under sudden load. For a moment I thought the boat's trajectory would change, that we'd successfully deflected it, but the boat was too heavy, moving too fast, had too much momentum. The hook held for maybe 3 seconds, then whatever it was snagged on tore free. The cable went slack. The boat kept coming. We could only watch, frozen, as the supply boat slammed into Deep Horizon 7's northwest support leg. The impact was massive. The entire platform shuddered like something alive. The vibration traveled up through the steel structure, through the deck under our feet, rattling equipment, shaking the railings we were gripping. Alarms started blaring throughout the platform. Collision alerts, structural stress warnings, emergency We could hear metal grinding against metal, bending, screaming. The supply boat's bow crumpled against the support leg. But the vessel was heavy, probably 300 tons, and its engines were still running at full throttle. The momentum carried it forward along the leg's length, the steel hull scraping against the concrete, and steel support with a sound like the world ending. Then the boat's fuel tanks ruptured. We saw the flash before we heard it. A brilliant orange fireball erupted from the boat's stern, engulfing the entire vessel in flames within seconds. The explosion's concussion wave hit us a heartbeat later, a physical wall of pressure that knocked several people down, sent loose equipment flying, shattered windows in the nearest modules. The burning boat drifted away from the platform. Pushed by the explosion's force and the ocean's current, we could see figures on the deck, burning, still moving, stumbling around in the flames until they collapsed or fell screaming into the water. The infected burned like everyone burns. They might not be human anymore, but they were still flesh and cloth and hair, and all of that burns. The boat drifted maybe 200 yards before it started to sink. The explosion had torn open the hull. Water rushed in. The vessel went down bow first, stern rising into the air for a moment before sliding under the surface. It took less than 5 minutes from explosion to complete submersion. Then there was nothing left but burning fuel oil on the water's surface and debris. Floating in the current. We stood on the platform in shocked silence, watching the flames on the water slowly burn themselves out, watching the smoke drift east toward the coast, watching our hopes of rescue sink along with that boat. Rodriguez was the first to speak. Engineering team, I need a full structural assessment of the northwest leg immediately. Everyone else, damage control. Check all modules for fire or impact damage. Move. The engineers, myself included, grabbed equipment and headed for the northwest leg's access points. The leg was a massive cylindrical structure, 50 feet in diameter, designed to support a quarter of the platform's weight, plus accommodate stress from waves and wind. We had inspection hatches at various points that let us access the interior. What we found was bad. Not catastrophic, but bad. The impact had caused structural cracks in the leg's outer shell. We could see stress fractures in the concrete, bent reinforcement, steel exposed where concrete had spalled off. The leg's interior showed deformation. The steel framework that gave the concrete its strength was bent in several places. We spent 6 hours doing the assessment, used ultrasound equipment to check for hidden damage, measured the cracks, calculated stress loads. Finally, we had to deliver the news to Rodriguez and the crew. The chief engineer, a man named Hartman, who'd been designing offshore platforms since the 1980s, gave the report in the mess hall that night. The northwest leg has sustained significant damage, multiple stress fractures in the outer shell, interior framework deformation. The leg is not in immediate danger of catastrophic failure, but it's been weakened. We estimate it's now operating at maybe 60% of design capacity. What does that mean for us? Someone asked. It means the other 3 legs are now bearing more load than they're designed for, Hartman said. It means if we take another significant impact, or if we get hit by a major storm with the wrong wave direction, the northwest leg might fail completely. And if one leg fails, the other 3 might not be able to compensate. The whole platform could collapse. Silence in the mess hall, everyone processing what that meant. Our fortress, our refuge, was now a ticking time bomb. How long do we have? Rodriguez asked. Hartman shrugged helplessly. Could be weeks, could be months, could be years, or it could fail tomorrow during routine wave action. There's no way to predict with certainty. Offshore structures are incredibly robust, but they're also subject to forces we can't fully model. All I can tell you is that this platform is now operating outside its design safety parameters. That night, 3 more people left. They took one of the remaining lifeboats, decided they'd rather risk the mainland and stay on a potentially collapsing platform. We watched them motor away toward the dark coast. Never heard from them again. Didn't expect to. That left 44 of us on deep Horizon 7, 44 people on a damaged platform in the middle of the Pacific, surrounded by endless water, with no rescue coming and no future we could see. And the tensions were only getting worse. Day 50, August 3rd, brought the first major storm. Pacific storms in summer are relatively rare, but when they come, they're brutal. This one built up fast. A low-pressure system that formed somewhere west of Hawaii and tracked northeast toward the California coast, directly over our position. We had weather monitoring equipment on the platform, barometers, anemometers, satellite weather data when we could still access it. Even without satellites, we could see it coming. The barometric pressure dropped like a stone. The clouds built up from the west, dark and ominous. The wind started picking up around noon, and by 1400 hours, we were seeing sustained winds of 30 miles per hour with gusts higher. Rodriguez called an all-hands meeting at 1500. We're going to get hit hard. Weather models or what we can still access of them are showing sustained winds potentially reaching 80 miles per hour. Wave heights up to 30 feet. This is going to test the platform's integrity, especially with the damaged northwest leg. We need to secure everything. All loose equipment gets tied down or moved inside. All external hatches get sealed. Everyone moves to interior modules. No one sleeps in perimeter cabins tonight. We ride this out together in the central core. We spend the next 6 hours in frantic preparation. Everything on the deck that could move got tied down with steel cables. Tools, equipment, the remaining lifeboat, spare parts, everything. We sealed every external door and hatch, double-checking the waterproofing. We moved food supplies, water, emergency gear into the central modules where we'd be sheltered from wind and waves. We prepped the backup generators in case the primary power failed. We checked and double-checked the bilge pumps that would keep the lower levels from flooding, that the storm hit at midnight. I was in one of the central modules with maybe 20 other people, trying to rest before my shift on watch. The first indication was the wind. You could hear it building, a low moan that grew louder and higher pitched as the velocity increased. Then the rain started, not normal rain, but sheets of water driven horizontally by 80-mile-per-hour winds, hitting the platform's walls like machine gun fire. Then the waves hit. The platform started moving. Offshore platforms aren't rigidly fixed, they're designed with some flex, some give, to absorb wave energy rather than resist it completely. In normal conditions, you barely notice the movement, but in a major storm, you feel every wave. The entire platform would rise as a large swell passed under us, lifting us maybe 10 or 15 feet. Then we'd drop as the wave passed, that stomach-lurching sensation of rapid descent. Then the cycle would repeat, over and over, rising and falling like we were on the world's slowest, largest roller coaster. The waves weren't uniform. Some were larger than others. Every few minutes, a rogue wave 30 feet or higher would slam into the support legs with a boom you could feel in your bones. The whole platform would shudder. Metal would groan. People would grab onto whatever was bolted down and hold on. And the damaged northwest leg. Every time a major wave hit it, we could hear it, a different sound than the other legs. A grinding, creaking noise that meant metal was bending. Concrete was cracking. The structure was being pushed beyond its limits. I spent most of that night certain we were going to die. Certain that the next big wave would be the one that finally broke the northwest leg. That would send the platform tilting. That would collapse the whole structure into the ocean. I imagined the death-cold water rushing in, the platform sinking. Being trapped in these metal corridors as they filled with seawater. Drowning in the dark. But the northwest leg held. Somehow, despite the damage, despite the stress, Despite the relentless pounding of 30-foot waves, it held. The storm lasted 18 hours. The wind peaked around 0300 with gusts over 100 miles per hour. The rain was so heavy you couldn't see 10 feet if you looked through a window. The waves were mountains of water that made our 150-foot platform feel small and fragile. When the storm finally passed, when the wind died down and the waves decreased to normal swells, when we could finally go outside and assess the damage, we emerged to a transformed platform. 2 of the remaining 3 lifeboats were gone. They'd been secured in their davits, but the storm had been too much. One had been torn completely away, David and all. The other had been smashed against the platform's side until it broke apart, leaving only twisted metal and fiberglass debris. We had 1 lifeboat left. For 44 people, if we needed to evacuate, we'd have to leave people behind. Multiple equipment areas were flooded. The lower decks had taken on water from waves washing over them. The bilge pumps were running continuously, trying to remove thousands of gallons of seawater. Some equipment was ruined, electrical panels shorted out, mechanical systems corroded by saltwater. Storage containers breached and their contents contaminated. The helipad, which we hadn't been using anyway since no helicopters were coming, was twisted. The storm winds had caught it like a sail, bending the support structure, warping the landing surface until it was unusable. But the platform was intact. We'd survived. The northwest leg had held. Barely. The engineering team did another assessment. The northwest leg had sustained additional damage, more cracks, more deformation. Hartman estimated it was now operating at maybe 40% capacity. The next major storm would probably finish it. We need to leave, someone said at the crew meeting that evening. We can't stay on a platform that's falling apart. And go where? Rodriguez countered. We have 1 lifeboat left. It holds 50 people maximum. There's 44 of us. Even if we all fit, where do we go? Shore is still 20 miles away and almost certainly overrun with infected. We saw what happened to the supply boat. That's what's waiting for us on land. At least we'd be trying, the person shot back. Instead of just sitting here waiting to drown. The argument went on for hours. In the end, Rodriguez made the same offer he'd made before. Anyone who wanted to leave could take the lifeboat. But he was staying, and he urged everyone to think carefully about trading the certainty of survival on the platform. A damaged platform for the near certainty of death on shore. 10 people left that night. 10 people who couldn't take the uncertainty anymore, who couldn't stand waiting for the platform to collapse, who'd rather die trying to reach land than die passively waiting. We watched the lifeboat motor away into the darkness, heading east. It had running lights, small red and green dots that grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared. That left 34 of us on Deep Horizon -7. And now we had no lifeboats at all. If the platform failed, we had no escape. We'd go down with it. Day 65 we had our first death that wasn't from someone choosing to leave. Jack Morrison. I didn't know him well. He'd worked a different shift rotation, was part of the drilling crew rather than engineering, but I'd shared meals with him, had passed him in corridors, knew his face and his name. He'd been getting quieter over the past weeks, stopped participating in conversations at meals, stopped coming to the communal areas, spent all his time either working his shift or alone in his cabin. Someone went to check on him when he didn't show up for his shift, found his cabin empty, started a search. We found him on the helipad around noon. He'd jumped sometime during the night, left a note on his bunk, simple and heartbreaking. Can't take the isolation anymore. Can't take not knowing if Sarah and the kids are alive. Can't take being stuck here watching the days pass while they might need me. I'm sorry. Tell Sarah I tried. Tell the kids I love them. Jack. We held a brief memorial service that evening, gathered on the helipad where he'd jumped. Rodriguez said a few words about Jack's work, about him being a good man who'd served the platform well. Someone, I think it was Mike Chenzang, Amazing Grace, in a wavering voice. A few people cried. Most just stood silent, staring out at the ocean that had taken him. We didn't have a body. The ocean had claimed him completely. We couldn't even see where he'd gone, and the water was 150 feet below us, and the waves erased everything. He was just gone, erased, like he'd never existed. After the service, people drifted away quietly. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to acknowledge that Jack might have made the right choice. That slow death by isolation on this platform might be worse than quick death by drowning, but we were all thinking it. Jack's death changed the atmosphere on the platform. People started talking more openly about leaving, about taking the small workboats that remained, little motorized dinghies designed for short trips between platform and supply vessels, not for 20-mile ocean crossings. They started talking about building rafts from platform materials. They started talking about anything except staying here until we ran out of food, or the platform collapsed, or we went as mad as Jack had. On day 70, August 23rd, 4 more people left. They took 2 of the small workboats. We tried to talk them out of it. Those boats weren't designed for open ocean, would probably capsize in any serious waves. But they were determined. They'd rather risk it than stay. We watched them motor away. The boats were so small they disappeared within minutes. Never heard from them again. 30 people left on Deep Horizon 7. Then 29 when someone fell from a maintenance ladder on day 73. Broke his neck, died instantly. We buried him at sea, weighted his body, and let it slide into the ocean from the lowest access platform. Watched it disappear into the dark water. Then 27 when 2 people took another workboat on day 7, just left without telling anyone, took supplies from the stores, and motored away before dawn. Every departure made the platform feel bigger, emptier. The mess hall that had been designed for 100 people now echoed when 27 of us gathered. We'd stopped using most of the platform. Whole modules went unused. Entire levels were dark and silent. We consolidated into the central areas, shutting down power to the outer sections to save generator fuel. The constant hum of machinery that had filled the platform when it was fully operational had diminished to a quieter rhythm. Just the essential generators running, the water desalination system operating on minimum capacity, the bilge pumps cycling periodically. Everything else was silent. It felt like the platform was dying along with our hopes. Day 100 September 22nd, we hit a critical milestone. Half our food was gone. We'd been rationing carefully from the beginning, but math is relentless. 2 meals a day, reduced portions, no waste. We'd done everything right. But 27 people eating every day for 100 days had consumed half our supplies. Rodriguez called a meeting. We gathered in the mess hall, sitting at tables that could hold 5 times our number. We looked at each other across empty space, seeing our own exhaustion and fear reflected in every face. We need to discuss our situation honestly, Rodriguez began. Food is running low. At our current consumption rate, we have approximately 60 more days before we run out completely. We've had no contact with shore in over 3 months. No ships have come, no helicopters, no indication that anyone even knows we're out here, or cares if they do. We need to make decisions about our future. What future? Someone asked bitterly. We're going to starve to death in 2 months. That's our future. We could try fishing, I said, repeating a suggestion I'd made before. We're in the middle of the ocean. There has to be fish around here. With what equipment? Mike Chen asked. We're an oil platform, not a fishing vessel. We don't have nets. We don't have proper rods. We don't have bait or lures or any of the equipment actual fishermen use. We improvise, I said. We have steel cable we can use for line. We can fabricate hooks from wire. We can use scraps from our food as bait. It's not ideal, but it's something. And even if we catch fish, how many? Someone else asked. Enough to feed 27 people every day. We'd need to catch dozens of fish daily just to replace what we're currently rationing. So what's your alternative? I shot back. Just sit here and wait to starve. At least fishing gives us a chance. The debate went on for hours. Some people were in favor of trying to fish. Others thought it was pointless, that we should take the remaining workboats and try to reach shore while we still had the strength. A few suggested we should reduce our numbers, that some people should voluntarily leave, so the remaining food would last longer for those who stayed. That suggestion nearly started a fight. Rodriguez had to intervene, had to calm people down, had to remind everyone that turning on each other would kill us faster than starvation. In the end, we agreed to try fishing while continuing to ration the stored food. A group of us, myself, Mike Chen, a couple of the roughnecks who claimed to have fished recreationally before offshore work, would attempt to catch supplemental food. The rest would maintain the platform and continue hoping for rescue that probably wasn't coming. We spent the next several days fabricating fishing equipment from platform materials, used steel cable for line, wound hundreds of feet of it onto improvised spools made from pipe sections, fabricated hooks from heavy gauge wire, bending it into shape and filing it sharp, created weights from scrap metal, set up fishing stations on the lower platforms where we could drop lines into the water. The first problem we discovered was depth. Deep Horizon 7 sat in waters 400 feet deep. Most fish don't live that deep. They stay closer to the surface where sunlight penetrates and photosynthesis occurs. To reach the depth where fish might be, we needed to drop our lines hundreds of feet, which meant we needed massive amounts of cable and very heavy weights to get the hooks down through the currents. The second problem was bait. We tried using scraps from our meals, bits of canned meat, bread soaked in oil, anything we thought might attract fish. But most of it either dissolved in the seawater or got stripped off the hooks by currents before any fish could find it. The third problem was our complete lack of fishing knowledge. None of us knew what we were doing. We were petroleum engineers and oil workers, not fishermen. We didn't know what depths different fish preferred, what times of day they fed, what bait they'd actually take. We were just dropping lines into 400 feet of water and hoping. For the first week, we caught nothing. Spent hours every day tending the lines, checking them, rebaiting hooks that came up empty. Nothing. The ocean below us was apparently devoid of fish, or at least devoid of fish stupid enough to bite our crude hooks. On day 108, we finally caught our first fish. I was on fishing duty with Mike Chen, both of us leaning over the rail of the lowest access platform, monitoring our lines. It was late afternoon, the sun starting to descend toward the western horizon. I'd been checking my line every 20 minutes or so, pulling it up hand over hand to see if anything had taken the bait. This time when I pulled, I felt resistance. Wait, movement. I think I've got something. I shouted to Mike. He came over to help. Together we started pulling up the line. It was heavy, fighting us. Whatever was down there didn't want to come up. We pulled hand over hand, winding the cable around our improvised spool. My arms burned, my hands cramped, but we kept pulling. After what felt like forever, we saw a flash of silver in the dark water below. Getting closer, a fish, a real fish, maybe 3 feet long, fighting against the line, twisting and turning. We pulled it up onto the platform. It was some kind of tuna. I think I wasn't a marine biologist. Couldn't identify species, but it was big, maybe 30 pounds, still flopping and fighting even out of the water. Mike grabbed a pipe wrench and killed it quickly. We stood there looking at it, this silvery thing that had been swimming in the ocean minutes ago and was now our dinner. We did it, Mike said, breathing hard. We actually did it. We carried the fish up to the mess hall like it was made of gold. People gathered around to look at it. First fresh food in months. Rodriguez decreed that we'd cook it immediately, share it among everyone. It wasn't much, a pound or so per person when divided 27 ways, but it was something. It was hope in fish form. That tuna was the best thing I'd eaten in my entire life. We cooked it on the propane stove, just simple pan frying with a little salt. The flesh was rich and oily and tasted like the ocean. We savored every bite, made it last as long as possible. But one fish wasn't enough. We needed to catch fish regularly to supplement our dwindling stores. The next day, we caught nothing. Day after that, nothing. Day after that, finally another tuna, smaller than the first. Then 3 days with nothing. Then a mahi, then 5 days with nothing. The pattern continued. We'd catch fish sporadically, maybe one fish every 3 or 4 days on average. Enough to supplement our diet, to give us occasional fresh food, to extend our stores marginally, but nowhere near enough to sustain 27 people. We were still burning through our stored food faster than we were replacing it with fish. The math was grim. Even with the occasional fish, we had maybe 70 days of food left. After that, what? Starve. Try to survive on fish alone, assuming we could catch enough, which we couldn't. The numbers didn't work. No matter how we calculated it, we were going to run out of food, and then we were going to die. Day 120, October 12th, brought the second major storm, and this time, the northwest leg didn't hold. We had about 8 hours of warning. The barometric pressure dropped dramatically overnight. The wind started building from the west. The clouds rolled in thick and dark. By noon we knew it was going to be bad. Maybe worse than the first storm. Rodriguez ordered the same protocols as before. Secure everything. Seal all hatches. Move to interior modules. Prepare for the worst. The storm hit around 1800 hours. It built faster than the first one. Within 2 hours we had sustained winds over 100 miles per hour. The waves were massive, 40 feet or higher, slamming into the support legs with impacts that shook the entire platform. I was in the central module with most of the crew when I heard it. A sound like a gunshot, but deeper, louder, more resonant. It echoed through the entire structure. The platform lurched sideways, not the normal rise and fall of waves, but a sudden lateral shift that sent people stumbling, sent unsecured objects sliding across the floor. Alarms started screaming. Emergency lights flashed red. Rodriguez's voice came over the PA, strained and urgent. Everyone to the mess hall immediately. Northwest leg has failed. Platform is listing. Move now. We scrambled through corridors that were no longer level. The platform was tilting. I could feel it maybe 5 degrees off horizontal, enough to notice, enough to make walking feel wrong. Equipment that wasn't bolted down was sliding toward the northwest corner. Water from the desalination tanks was sloshing audibly through the pipes. We made it to the mess hall. Rodriguez was there with the engineering team, looking at structural monitoring displays that showed angry red indicators. Hartman was pale, gripping the edge of a table to keep his balance on the tilted floor. "Talk to me," Rodriguez demanded. "How bad?" "The northwest leg has fractured at the main support joint," Hartman said, his voice shaking. "It's not completely failed, it's still attached, still providing some support, but it's no longer bearing its design load. The fracture is significant. The other 3 legs are compensating, but they're now carrying roughly 33% more weight each than they're designed for. We're stable for the moment, but we're operating far outside safety parameters." "How long do we have?" someone asked. It was the question we always asked now, the question that defined our existence. How long until catastrophic failure? How long until we die? "Unknown," Hartman admitted. "Could be days, could be weeks. The other 3 legs might handle the extra load indefinitely, or they might start fracturing under the stress. Another major storm could finish us, or we could survive for months. The variables are too complex to predict with certainty. But I'll be honest, this platform is dying. It's not a question of if it fails. It's when." The mess hall was silent, except for the howl of wind outside and the groan of stressed metal. 27 people processing the fact that our refuge was now a tomb waiting to close. The storm continued through the night. The list increased gradually. 5 degrees became 6, then 7. Walking required using handrails. Objects rolled off tables if you set them down wrong. Water in our drinking cups sat at an angle that looked wrong, that made your brain itched up by morning when the storm finally passed. The list had stabilized at around 8 degrees. The platform was noticeably tilted now. You couldn't ignore it. Every movement, every step, every moment of existence reminded you that the structure you were living on was no longer sound. 6 people left that day. They'd had enough. They took 2 of the remaining work boats. We were down to 3 small boats now, and decided they'd rather risk the 20-mile ocean crossing than stay on a collapsing platform. "You're going to die out there," Rodriguez told them. "Not cruel, just stating fact. We're going to die here too," one of them replied. "At least this way we choose how." We watched them motor away, 6 people in 2 tiny boats designed for calm water transfers, heading toward a shore that had been silent for over 100 days. They disappeared over the horizon. We never saw them again. 20-1 people left on deep. Horizon 7, 21 people on a platform that was listing 8 degrees and getting worse. Every day. Because it was getting worse. Over the next week we could feel the list increasing. 8 degrees became 9. 9 became 10. By day 130 we were at 10 degrees of list, and walking through the corridors felt like walking up or down a hill, depending on which direction you were heading. We moved all our critical supplies to the central modules where the tilt was less noticeable, consolidated our living spaces into the most stable sections, started making plans for what we'd do when the platform finally failed completely. But what could we plan? We had 3 small workboats left. They could maybe hold 8 people each if we crowded them dangerously. That was 24 people maximum. We had 21 people remaining, so theoretically we could all fit. But those boats weren't designed for open ocean. They'd probably capsize in any serious waves. And where would we go? 20 miles to a shore that we'd watched burn months ago, that had gone silent, that probably held nothing but death. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" someone said at dinner one night. It was a woman named Saran, the Sarah who'd gotten infected. Different person. She'd been quiet for weeks, barely speaking, barely eating. Now she voiced what we were all thinking. Nobody answered, because the answer was probably yes. Day 100. I was alone on what remained of the helipad when I saw it. The helipad was on the south side of the platform, the high side now because of the list. It was still accessible, even though the landing surface itself was warped and unusable. I'd gone up there because I needed to be alone, needed to get away from the claustrophobic interior modules and the constant presence of 20 other people who were all slowly dying along with me. I was looking north, out over the ocean, when I saw it. A helicopter, far away, maybe 10 miles out, just a black speck against the gray clouds, but definitely a helicopter. The shape was unmistakable, and I could hear the faint thump of rotors carrying across the water. I ran for the emergency flares we kept in lockers throughout the platform, grabbed one, ran back to the helipad, aimed it up and fired. The flare shot into the sky trailing red smoke, climbed maybe 500 feet before the parachute deployed and it started drifting. Bright red, impossible to miss if you were looking. I watched the helicopter, willed it to change course, to turn toward us, to see our distress signal that it kept going, straight path, no deviation, not even a wobble, just continued on whatever course it was flying until it disappeared beyond the southern horizon. They hadn't seen us, or they'd seen us and chosen not to respond, or they'd seen us and decided that a damaged, listing oil platform in the middle of the ocean wasn't worth the risk of landing. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. We were still alone. I stood on that tilted helipad for maybe an hour after the helicopter disappeared, holding the empty flare launcher, feeling something break inside me. That had been our chance, maybe our last chance, and it had flown right past us without stopping. Day 150. The food ran out completely. We'd been rationing down to almost nothing for weeks. One small meal per day, portions that were barely enough to quiet hunger. We'd stretched the supplies as far as physically possible, but you can't create food from nothing. The last can in our store's think it was green beans, though it could have been corn, was opened and divided among 21 people. Everyone got maybe 3 or 4 beans. A tablespoon of liquid, that was it. The last of our food. Now we were completely dependent on fishing, and the fish weren't cooperating. We caught nothing for 3 days after the food ran out. 3 days of drinking water and nothing else. 3 days of feeling your body start to consume itself, burning fat and then muscle for energy. 3 days of weakness spreading through your limbs, of dizziness when you stood up too fast, of constant gnawing hunger that nothing could satisfy. On the 4th day, we caught a small fish, maybe 10 pounds, divided among 21 people. It was barely a mouthful each, but it was something. It kept us alive for another day. People started getting desperate, started talking about eating anything they could find. Seaweed that grew on the support legs, someone tried scraping some off and boiling it. It made them violently ill. Seagulls that occasionally landed on the platform, one guy tried to catch one. The bird fought back, pecking and clawing. He gave up with bleeding hands and nothing to show for it. Someone suggested we could eat the barnacles that grew on the support legs below the waterline. We'd have to dive down to get them, risk drowning or hypothermia in the cold Pacific water. But we were hungry enough to consider it. Mike Chan and I volunteered. We rigged up a safety line steel cable tied around our waists, secured to the platform railing. We'd lower ourselves down the support leg using maintenance rungs, scrape off barnacles, come back up. Simple, dangerous, but simple. The water was shockingly cold. Even in October, the Pacific off California is cold year-round, maybe 60 degrees. When I lowered myself into it, the shock nearly made me gasp and breathe in water. My muscles seized. My skin went numb almost instantly. I forced myself to keep moving. Descended the maintenance rungs on the support leg until I was 10 feet below the surface. The barnacles were thick here, covering the concrete in a crust of sharp shells. I started scraping them off with a knife, dropping them into a mesh bag we'd improvised. I collected maybe 5 pounds before I couldn't take the cold anymore. Climbed back up, shivering so hard my teeth were chattering. Mike went down next. Got about the same amount. We pulled ourselves back onto the platform, hypothermic and exhausted, with 10 pounds of barnacles. We boiled them, tried to eat them. They were rubbery, salty, tasted like the worst seafood you can imagine. But they were protein, they were calories. We forced them down. That night, half the people who'd eaten barnacles got sick. Food poisoning or just their bodies rejecting something so far outside normal human diet. Either way, we lost more calories to vomiting than we'd gained from eating. We didn't try harvesting barnacles again. Day 160, 3 more people left. They didn't take the workboats. There were 3 boats left, and they chose not to use them. Instead, they built a raft. They spent 2 days constructing it from platform materials. Empty oil drums for flotation, sections of metal decking for the platform surface, pipe for the frame, steel cable to lash it all together. They fabricated crude paddles from pipe and sheet metal, created a simple shelter from salvaged tarp material. When they were done, they had something that maybe survive a 20-mile ocean crossing if conditions were perfect and luck was overwhelmingly on their side. We're going to try to reach shore, the leader of the group told Rodriguez. His name was Thompson, had been a driller before the outbreak. It's suicide to stay here. The platform is collapsing. We're starving. At least out there we have a chance, however small. Here we're just waiting to die. Rodriguez didn't argue, didn't try to stop them, just helped them lower the raft into the water using the crane. The 3 of them climbed down the access ladder to their raft. It floated, at least, bobbed on the swells like a cork, but it floated. They settled onto it, grabbed their improvised paddles, and started paddling east toward the coast that was barely visible as a dark smudge on the horizon. We watched them paddle away. 3 people on a raft made from trash, heading toward a shore that might not even exist anymore in any meaningful sense. They got maybe half a mile from the platform before the current and their exhaustion made them stop making progress. The raft started drifting north, pushed by prevailing currents. We watched until they were out of sight. 18 people left on deep horizon 7. 18 people running out of time. Day 170, the infection finally reached us. We'd thought we were safe from it. 20 miles of ocean between us and the infected mainland. No contact with shore for months. No way for the infection to reach us. We were wrong. It came from the supply boat, the one that had crashed into us back on day 34. One of our crew members, a guy we all called Rodriguez. Though his first name was Miguel and he was no relation to the platform manager, Rodriguez had been on the deck when the supply boat hit. Had been part of the crew trying to fend it off with the crane. He'd never mentioned getting injured. Never said anything about being bitten or scratched or coming into contact with the infected. But he must have, somehow, during that chaos, one of the infected from the boat must have reached him, maybe grabbed him through his coveralls, maybe bled on him through a cut in his skin. However it happened, the infection had entered his body, and it had been incubating for 136 days. We didn't know infected could incubate that long. Everything we'd seen on the news before the broadcasts stopped had shown people turning within hours or days, not months. But maybe different people reacted differently. Maybe Miguel's immune system had been fighting it all this time, keeping the infection at bay, until finally it overwhelmed his defenses. Or maybe he'd been bitten more recently and just hidden it. Maybe there was infection in the water around the platform, in the fish we'd been eating, in something we hadn't anticipated. We'd never know for sure. The first sign was fever. Miguel had been looking sick for a few days, sweating, pale, weak. We'd assumed it was just malnutrition and stress, the same symptoms everyone had. We were all gaunt and exhausted by day 170. Miguel just looked a little worse than average. Then he started getting aggressive. It happened during the evening meal. We were in the mess hall, 18 of us scattered across tables meant for 100. Miguel was sitting alone, picking at the tiny portion of fish we'd managed to catch that day. Someone, I think it was Sarah, made a comment about needing to catch more fish tomorrow. Miguel's head snapped up. His eyes were wrung, bloodshot, unfocused. He stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. "Stop talking about fish," he said, his voice harsh and strange. "Stop talking, Miguel. You okay?" Someone asked. He didn't respond, just stood there swaying slightly. Then he lunged across the table at the person who'd spoken, moving with sudden violence that caught everyone by surprise. It took 3 of us to restrain him. He fought like something that didn't feel pain, didn't recognize danger. We managed to pin him down, and that's when we saw it. The bite mark on his left forearm, mostly healed over but visible if you knew what to look for, old, months old. The skin around it was discolored, dark veins spreading from the wound like a spiderweb. "He's infected," someone whispered. "Jesus Christ, he's turning." We got him contained in one of the storage rooms. It was all we could do. Locked the door from outside. Put him in there with some water and a blanket, and nothing he could use to hurt himself or break through the door. He screamed and pounded on the door for hours. Screamed words at first begging us to let him out, swearing he was fine, promising he'd be okay. Then the words became less coherent. Then they became just sounds. Animal sounds. Rage and pain vocalized without language. Then the sounds changed. Became less human. More something else. We had a crew meeting that night. 18 people minus Miguel locked away. We had to decide what to do. "We have to kill him," someone said bluntly, "before he breaks out. Before he infects anyone else. He's still human," platform manager Rodriguez argued, though his voice lacked conviction. "He's infected, yes, but he's still Miguel. Still one of us. That thing screaming in the storage room isn't Miguel anymore." Another person countered. "Miguel is dead. What's left is just infection wearing his body. We put it down before it becomes a threat." The debate went on for hours. Some people argued for mercy that Miguel deserved better than being killed like an animal. But we should at least wait to see if he recovered, if the infection could be fought off. Others argued for pragmatism, that infected were dangerous, that we couldn't risk him escaping, that killing him now was the only safe choice. Rodriguez finally made the decision. We wait. We keep him contained. We monitor the situation. If he shows signs of recovering, we help him. If he deteriorates further, we make the hard choice. But we don't kill him while there's still a chance he might survive this. Days passed. The sounds from the storage room became less frequent but more disturbing when they did occur. Miguel was deteriorating. We could hear it in the quality of the sounds, less human with each passing day. On day 175, the decision was made for us. Miguel broke through the storage room door. He'd been clawing at it for days, weakening the wood and metal, and finally he broke through, burst out into the corridor. He moved fast, faster than any of us expected. The infection had changed him, enhanced his strength, removed his inhibitions, turned him into something that existed only to attack and spread. He grabbed the nearest person, a woman named Sarah, who'd been walking past the storage room, and bit into her shoulder before anyone could react. She screamed. Blood poured from the wound. Miguel's teeth had gone through her shirt, through skin and muscle. Someone grabbed a pipe wrench from a maintenance kit, swung it hard, connected with Miguel's head. He went down but didn't stop moving. They hit him again, until he finally stopped. Until what had been Miguel Rodriguez lay still on the corridor floor. Sarah was screaming, bleeding, holding her shoulder where the bite had torn away flesh. We wrapped it, tried to stop the bleeding, got her to the medical bay where we had bandages and antibiotics, but we all knew what the bite meant. How long? She asked through tears, her voice shaking. How long do I have before I turn? Miguel took 136 days. Someone said, maybe you'll have that long, maybe longer. We were wrong, so wrong. Sarah turned in 3 days. The fever hit her within 24 hours. By the second day she was delirious, sweating, barely conscious. By the third day she was violent. We had to sedate her with the limited medical supplies we had left, lock her in a different storage room. She went through the same progression Miguel had, screaming, thrashing, the sounds becoming less human, the infection consuming everything that had been Sarah and replacing it with something else. This time we didn't wait. On day 178, when it became clear Sarah wasn't going to recover, that she'd turned completely, Rodriguez made the call. To volunteers, I wasn't one of them, couldn't bring myself to do it, went into the storage room with pipes and ended it quickly. They sealed her body in the storage room. We'd deal with disposal later, if there was a later. 16 of us left, and we had 2 infected bodies locked in storage rooms. The platform was becoming a tomb in more ways than one. Day 180 brought the third major storm. Smaller than the previous 2, but the platform couldn't take much more. Winds reached maybe 60 miles per hour. Waves 20 feet. In normal conditions, trivial. But for a platform already listing at 10 degrees with a fractured support leg, it was catastrophic. The list increased during the storm. 10 degrees became 12. 12 became 15. We could hear metal groaning constantly now. Feel vibrations through the deck that shouldn't be there. The northwest leg was failing further, and the other 3 legs were buckling under the redistributed weight. When the storm passed, we did another structural assessment. Hartman's report was grim. The platform won't survive another major storm. Maybe won't survive another week even without a storm. We're at 15 degrees of list, and it's increasing daily. Best estimate is we have 72 hours to 1 week before catastrophic structural failure. After that, the platform will collapse into the ocean. 72 hours to 1 week. 3 days to 7 days. Then death. Rodriguez gathered us one final time. 16 people in the tilted mess hall. We looked like concentration camp survivors gone hollow-eyed, wearing clothes that hung loose on our starving frames. We'd been on this platform for 180 days, 6 months, half a year of isolation and slow death. I've been monitoring the emergency radio frequencies, Rodriguez said as a broadcast. It started 2 weeks ago. Automated. On repeat. Coordinates. Claims to be a military safe zone. Says they're sending rescue ships to collect survivors from offshore platforms and vessels. He pulled out a map, pointed to a location on the California coast. Here, 40 miles south of our position. They're broadcasting that ships are doing sweeps, picking up survivors. If we can get there, if the broadcast is real, we might make it. That's 40 miles, someone said. We have 3 small workboats. They're not designed for 40-mile ocean crossings. No, they're not, Rodriguez agreed. Which is why we're not using them. We're building rafts. We use every floating material on this platform. Every oil drum, every foam panel, every plastic container. We lash it all together. Build multiple rafts. Distribute our weight. It'll be dangerous as hell, but it's our only chance. Nobody argued, because he was right. Staying meant dying when the platform collapsed. Leaving meant maybe dying, but with at least a chance of survival. We spent the next 3 days in frantic construction, ripped apart sections of the platform, taking anything that would float. 55-gallon oil drums became our primary flotation. We found maybe 100 of them in storage, both full and empty. Lashed them together with steel cable to create buoyant platforms, used sections of metal decking as floor surfaces, pipe for framing, more cable to lash everything together, created crude paddles from pipe and sheet metal, built simple shelters from tarp material to protect against sun and spray. By day 185 we had 5 rafts. They weren't pretty, they were crude, improvised, barely seaworthy, but they floated. Each raft could carry 3 or 4 people if we distributed weight carefully. We loaded them with supplies. Every container of fresh water we could spare, a small amount of food we'd managed to catch and preserve, medical supplies, tools, flares, emergency radio beacons, anything that might help us survive a 40-mile ocean crossing. On the evening of day 185 we were ready, 16 people, 5 rafts, 40 miles of open ocean, heading toward coordinates that might or might not represent actual rescue. Platform manager Rodriguez addressed us one final time. We stood on the tilted deck in the fading light, the ocean stretching endlessly around us. "I'm not coming," Rodriguez said quietly. Everyone froze, stared at him. "Someone needs to stay," he continued. "Keep the radio beacon active in case other survivors are out there. Keep broadcasting our story. Make sure people know what happened here." And he glanced toward the storage rooms where Miguel and Sarah's bodies lay. "Someone needs to make sure those things don't escape if the platform doesn't sink completely. Someone needs to see this through to the end." "You'll die here," someone said. "Maybe," Rodriguez acknowledged. "Or maybe the platform holds longer than we think. Maybe a rescue ship comes. Maybe I get lucky. Either way, this is my choice. I'm the platform manager. My responsibility is this platform and its crew. You're my crew, and I'm getting you off. But I stay with the platform until the end." We tried to argue, tried to convince him to come with us, but Rodriguez was adamant. And we didn't have time. The platform was listing worse every hour. We needed to leave while we still could. We said our goodbyes. Awkward, emotional goodbyes with a man who'd kept us alive for 6 months, who'd made impossible decisions, who'd shepherded us through crisis after crisis. He shook each person's hand, told us to survive, told us to remember what happened here. Then we climbed down to the rafts, used the platform's crane to lower ourselves to the water one by one, settled onto our makeshift vessels, untied the lines connecting us to deep horizon. The last thing I saw was Rodriguez standing on the tilted deck, one hand raised in farewell. Then the platform slipped behind us as current and our paddling carried us away. We paddled south and east, 5 rafts in a loose convoy, trying to stay together, making maybe 2 miles an hour when we paddled hard. The ocean was relatively calm, 3-foot swells, light wind, good conditions for rafts that would capsize in anything serious. The first night was hell, dark, cold, the rafts rising and falling on swells that felt enormous when you were riding them on a platform of lashed-together oil drums. We lashed the rafts together for stability, but that meant we drifted as one unit, unable to steer effectively. On the second day, one of the rafts started breaking apart. The cables holding it together had worked loose from the constant movement. The 3 people on it had to be distributed to other rafts, making everyone dangerously overcrowded. We saw land on the 3rd day. The California coast, mountains visible in the hazy distance, real, solid, calling us, and on the 4th day 189 we reached it. We beached on a rocky shore south of Big Sur, 16 people climbing off rafts on shaking legs that barely remembered how to walk on solid ground. We collapsed on sand and rock, just grateful to be on land after 189 days offshore. But our relief was short-lived. The coast wasn't safe. We could see infected in the distance, hear their moans carrying on the wind. The broadcast's coordinates were still 10 miles south. We had to keep moving. We walked, following Highway 1 south. The highway was a graveyard, abandoned cars everywhere. Some crashed, some just stopped in the road, as if drivers had simply given up. Bodies in some of them. We tried not to look. We avoided infected. They were scattered, not in huge groups, shambling aimlessly along the road or through the brush. We'd hide when we saw them, wait for them to pass, then continue. It was terrifying being on land again after so long isolated on the platform. Every shadow could hide infected. Every sound could be them coming. We scavenged what we could from abandoned cars and buildings, found some bottled water, a few cans of food that hadn't been looted. Not much, but enough to keep us going. We made it to the coordinates on day 192, found a military checkpoint, actual military Marines. From what I could see, they had barriers, guard towers, fences topped with razor wire, a fortified position. They saw us approaching, raised weapons, ordered us to stop. Hands up, we complied. stood there exhausted and terrified while soldiers approached carefully, weapons trained on us. "We're from Deep Horizon 7, I called out. "Offshore oil platform." We heard the broadcast. "We're not infected, we're just trying to survive." They kept weapons on us, but started asking questions. How long had we been isolated? Had we had contact with infected? Were any of us showing symptoms? Did we have any bites or scratches? We answered everything, told them about the platform, about the 6 months offshore, about the 2 infected we'd had to deal with. They listened, conferred. Finally, the ranking officer lieutenant made a decision. "We'll take you in. But you're going into quarantine, 72 hours. We need to make absolutely sure none of you are infected. Standard protocol. After that, if you're clear, you're free to join the settlement." They took us through the checkpoint into a fortified compound, put us in a quarantine facility, a converted warehouse with individual cells, fed us, gave us water, medical attention for our various ailments, malnutrition, dehydration, infected wounds from barnacle harvesting and other injuries. 3 days of quarantine, 3 days of wondering if any of us would show symptoms, if the infection had somehow reached us through the fish we'd eaten or the water we'd been drinking or some vector we hadn't anticipated. But after 72 hours, we were all still human, all still clear. They released us into the main settlement, a community of maybe 500 survivors living behind walls, growing food, trying to rebuild some semblance of civilization. On day 195, I asked a lieutenant about Deep Horizon 7. Did anyone go back? There was a man who stayed on the platform manager Rodriguez. Did anyone check on him? The lieutenant pulled up records on a computer, shook his head. No rescue missions to offshore platforms. Too risky. We don't have the air support or resources. I'm sorry. Rodriguez had died alone on that platform, or was still there, waiting. Either way, we'd left him behind. Day 200. I stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. I could see oil platforms in the distance, tiny specks on the horizon. Wondered which one was Deep Horizon 7. Wondered if Rodriguez was still alive out there, still maintaining the radio beacon, still waiting. Wondered if the platform had finally collapsed, if it had slid into the ocean, taking him with it. I'd survived 200 days on an offshore oil rig during the zombie apocalypse. Had watched 78 people leave the platform, most of them to die. Had seen friends turn infected. Had starved and suffered and nearly frozen. Had paddled 40 miles on a raft made from trash. I'd chosen the most isolated place I could find when the world ended. 20 miles of ocean between me and the infection. A fortress of steel and concrete suspended above dark water. It had seemed perfect. It had seemed safe. And it had saved me, for a while, given me time to survive when everyone on shore was dying. But it had also trapped me, isolated me, nearly killed me through starvation and exposure and the slow structural failure of aging infrastructure. Some nights I can still hear the sound of waves against support legs, can still feel the platform listing under my feet, can still see Rodriguez waving goodbye as we paddled away into the unknown. I'm alive, I'm on solid ground, I'm safe behind walls with other survivors, but part of me is still out there, 20 miles offshore, on a dying platform in the middle of the Pacific, alone with the ghosts of everyone who didn't make it. The ocean is vast and beautiful, and utterly indifferent to whether you live or die. I learned that lesson well, and I'll carry it with me for whatever remains of my life. If this story made you think about isolation, about the price of safety, about choosing between certain death and possible survival, hit subscribe, drop a comment. Could you survive 200 days alone on an oil rig 20 miles from shore? Stay grounded, stay connected. And remember, sometimes the safest place is also the loneliest. And loneliness can kill you just as surely as any infection. If this story made you think about isolation, about the ocean's indifference, about choosing between certain death and possible survival, hit that subscribe button. This took weeks to research and write real offshore platform specifications, actual survival calculations, everything as realistic as possible. Drop a comment and tell me, could you survive 200 days on an offshore oil rig? Would you have stayed on the platform or taken the first lifeboat on day 7? What would you have done differently? I read every comment. Your feedback shapes the next stories. If you made it through all 3+ hours, you're a real one. Most people don't have the attention span anymore, but you do. That's special. Next story drops next week. Hit the bell so you don't miss it. Stay grounded, stay connected, and remember, the safest place isn't always the best place. Sometimes safety is just another word for slow death. Thanks for listening to the end. It means more than you know. Your narrator